Kentucky is ranked one of the best in the nation when it comes to the number of pharmacies on street corners.
We are third per capita, trailing New York and West Virginia. Despite those numbers, pharmacists we talk to say stores are closing and there's little relief in sight.
WKYT's Kristen Kennedy investigates the state of pharmacies here in the Commonwealth.
I get phone calls literally daily of pharmacies that are considering closure.
Dr. Ben Mudd used to work in a retail pharmacy. Now, as the executive director of the Kentucky Pharmacists Association, he advocates for them.
Pharmacies are filling more prescriptions than they ever have, but they're not making enough money to keep the lights on and pay their folks.
Not only are we seeing under reimbursement for the drug, we're not getting paid dispensing fees. So it's not just about the cost of the drug, it's also what it costs to have employees and have an actual location for people to visit, have a pharmacist that they can talk to.
Dr. Shelley Roberts started Grassroots Pharmacy with her husband 7 years ago. She says since then, costs have risen, reimbursements have fallen. In the past 2 years, 80 independently owned pharmacies like Grassroots have closed their doors for good. That's according to the Kentucky Pharmacists Association. This on top of CVS, Walgreens, and Rite Aid closing stores and slowing their own growth.
There is some hope. The governor signed Senate Bill 188 earlier this year. It restricts pharmacy benefit managers, PBMs. They negotiate all prescription drug sales and keep a portion of the proceeds.
Do you believe the bill that's going to go into effect in January will put an end to the problems that pharmacists have with PBMs?
I don't think this is the end, but I think that it will help tremendously.
The bill won't go into effect until January 1st. Kristen Kennedy, WKYT.
Several years ago, Kentucky passed a law cutting PBMs out of the state's Medicaid program. Senate Bill 188 has similar restrictions, but this time on private health insurers.